Live, episode 86. I am your co-host, Pisky. I am joined, as always, by the one and only Godfather. And as promised, we have a professional props bettor here with us today. This is Adam. This is at the Beagle Bets on X. You can give him a follow right away because this guy is a professional. He knows what he's talking about. And Adam, I'm going to start it off. Before I even say hello and say thank you for coming, I'm going to start off by saying I know you're a very intelligent guy, and we've had very intelligent people on this podcast before. So number one rule is you cannot embarrass the Godfather and I. Because last time we had an intellect on here, he made us look stupid. So no making us look stupid. You got it?
What do you mean?
Thanks for doing this, man. Really, honestly, I'm excited.
Welcome.
I've been fired up all week.
Happy to be here.
And I'm fired up all week because I know we're going to learn a lot in this episode, and you're going to help us with our Super Bowl props. So why don't we kick it off with you just telling us where you're from, how you got involved with sports betting, or just betting in general.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up just outside of Boston. Kind of, typical childhood, I guess. Played a lot of, but I always had like two older brothers, and them and my dad and I, we always played like tons of games, like chess, card games, board games, lots of strategy games. So I think that kind of set the stage a little bit. So when I was in college, my friend said he was making money playing poker, and I didn't really seem like that plausible at the time. I never really heard of people doing this. But he said, give it a try. He was playing, back then he was playing like 24 tables, like small stakes. And back then it was pretty easy. This was probably around 2007. You could just fold like almost everything, play premium hands. People didn't really notice. They would just donate to you.
Okay.
But so I was a little too ADHD for that though. So I started just playing heads up sit and goes. And because it's action, action, action all the time. That suited me better. And I think I was pretty aggressive. I think I just kind of had a good sense for how to play compared to how a lot of people were playing at that time. I started moving up, playing high stakes. I was, playing like the up to 5,000 heads up sit and goes. And it was kind of a funny lifetime. My roommates would be waiting for me to go out to like the dollar draft night in college, and they caught on. I just got to finish this game for $5,000. But
in everybody's best interest, eh?
But then, sort of not too surprisingly, I had a good intuition for it, but people started using math and programs and actually kind of figuring out more mathematical ways to play, and I wasn't doing that. So, as in anything in gambling, right? If you don't adapt, you fall behind. So all of a sudden, the games that used to be a +2, +3% edge becoming a -2%, which is not as good.
Yeah, no, that sucks.
So, and then as a lot of people probably know, when Black Friday hit in 2011, so you couldn't keep playing on the major poker sites in the US. And I didn't really want to leave the country or anything, so I was just kind of kept playing on some smaller sites. And also, while I've been playing poker, I liked sports growing up. Kind of didn't follow them as much when I was in college, but I actually dropped out of college to keep playing poker. I was spending way more of my time doing that than studying, so I figured it was time to make a change.
A guy from Boston, a guy from Boston, not into sports. This is a first.
Well, I was always into them. Just kind of took a little hiatus for a few years, busy in college. But then I started playing fantasy basketball leagues for money with other poker players. So that was, I think, kind of my introduction to starting to get into sports for a living, into betting. And I think one thing that poker really gave me going into sports was the idea, right, from like rounders, if you can't spot the sucker at the table in the first 30 minutes, you're the sucker. So
great movie,
I kind of knew,
way.
I didn't know how to win, but I knew that if I just logged on and said, hey, I'm going to bet Lakers +6, they're a good team, like that wasn't going to be a way to win.
No.
So I started with long teasers, pretty easy way to get into it. And then the first thing I started originating myself was just who would score first in NBA games. I was like GRP wins. I had a notebook where I would write down. I would go through the game log. No sophistication at all, right? I'd go through the game logs manually. It would take hours, but I would just write down who would get the tip off every time. And then I would see, okay, this center's winning 70%. This center's winning 33%. Okay, they're facing each other. Probably going to be really likely which team gets the ball first.
Right.
So And I just kind of went
Nice.
from there. Obviously that worked. Not getting rich doing that, but it's a winning system, not too surprising there.
So
And
just to interject quickly, Adam, when you were
sure.
doing those basketball ones, were the lines like minus 110 aside? Were they even, or were they kind of favored towards the guy that was 70%?
Back then, they didn't really know who would win the tip-off. They would be
Wow.
skewed more so on the spread of the team.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Okay.
in my
Wow.
opinion,
Wow.
probably even a little too much. So my favorite bets was if you had a good jump ball, but you were a bad team. So you'd be like an underdog and you get plus money. I think those are
Yeah.
probably my favorite ones. But
Makes
Wow.
sense. Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't calculating exactly how much more favored you were. But even if you're a 10, 12-point favorite, you're only going to get, say, 5 more baskets over the course of a game. It shouldn't tilt you that much in who scores first. And I didn't really calculate it. Just having an edge on the jump ball was enough to win on that. And it
Hmm.
wasn't pushing small edges, right? If one guy was 60, one guy was 50, it wasn't probably betting that.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah.
looking
No,
for
I've heard
looking for
about
ones
this.
where you got 20, 25% gap between the two of them. And
I've heard about this. I remember the Full Dog mentioning this time. I don't think he caught on to it quite as early as you did, but I remember this back in the day that, yes, there was something. It might have even been back. What year did you say that was in?
this was probably 2011, I think.
Hmm.
2011. So, yeah, I think he might have been still working at BetUS back then. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he definitely was because
He
that was the
definitely
beginning of
was.
Banfield Group. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he noticed that, Christ, maybe it's you or someone you
I don't
teamed
think I
up
was on
with.
BetUS, but I
You
was
weren't
hitting
at
like
BetUS?
five
Okay.
dimes and
Okay,
Oh,
five
because no,
dimes
Tony.
bookmaker, I think. Yeah.
there were people like I think that's where he caught on to the system is that holy shit, this should be favored in different ways. Wow. Okay, no,
Nice.
that's very interesting. Yeah, no, I've definitely heard about the jump ball thing in the NBA.
So yeah, then through about 2011 through 2016, I was playing poker and I was sports betting. And I was winning some at both, wasn't really doing amazing at both, nowhere near how I'd been doing at poker pre, like say 2009, 2010 time.
Okay.
I wasn't really improving my craft that much at either. I was just I was working on both, but kind of bouncing around. Like I'll have a bad week at poker, I'll focus more on sports this week,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
it was winning, but and I had money saved from poker. So, I wasn't really worried too much. I had some ups and downs, but at the same time, wasn't really maybe progressing that much.
Okay.
And then in 2017, I actually started working full time with someone for a while. He was a friend of the family. He's a few years younger than me. He was just getting out of college, and he didn't know that much about gambling, but he had a computer science degree. So
That
Ah,
helps.
we
Yeah.
kind
valuable.
of kind of blended. So and at this point, I 95% gave up poker. Still maybe played a little, but basically from then
Okay.
on, and moved on to sports. And started doing better then. Combination, I think, just being focused on one thing, and then also working with someone who was coding and a lot better at math than me. I could
Mhm.
give him some. I've always been very strong on the idea side. He's going to be
Okay.
stronger on the math and implementation side. So
Yeah.
Nice combo.
yeah, and so we were doing baseball, basketball, football, and he actually made a simulation model. I helped him sort of design it, but he coded it for baseball. And I think this would have been a great model if we made it, say, in 2010, but we were making it without StatCast. The year StatCast came out.
Oh
Oh,
shit.
okay.
So
Okay.
unfortunately, it could beat openers, at least when it first came out and everything, but it didn't really, it wasn't as good as we thought because people were starting to look at more advanced stuff than we were. So,
Mm,
but
Okay.
gotcha.
the cool thing
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it was simulation. So it wasn't just giving you a spread in total, it was churning out like player plot results. And those
Really.
lines were
Oh,
softer. So we were doing pretty well with those and
nice.
betting football. And he also made some models for game props for football, which the crazy thing
Okay.
is they were based off nothing but sides and spread and total. And
Really.
you had these huge edges. One
Okay.
off shags that kind of just dried up for the most part this year is our longest touchdown. They
Okay.
would,
Go ahead.
we saw like a huge statistical edge on every single game on under longest touchdown.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna
Under.
say
we would maybe
under. Yeah.
filter out 2 or 3 games where we knew they really like to throw it deep, but we would bet 14 out of 16 games in a weekend, and we'd be returning 8-10%. It was
Woo.
but finally this year
Compliment.
lines that used to be 39 and a half, longest touchdown will be 34 and a half, maybe 29 and a half. So it's still
Wow.
something I might bet sometimes, but it's not, like
It's
anything, right? When it's that much of an edge, people are going to the books are gonna see like, hey, okay, every sharp account is betting under and they're winning. So
Yeah. It obviously,
it's a
they
little too
catch on
simple
after a
to
while.
reverse engineer what we're doing right there.
Mm.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Like I know in our roadmap here we have a small discussion about what we were doing with props with the Banfield Group versus, I'm sorry, Godfather, but the Lottery Corporation, and I remember things like that. Like Godfather, I think you can relate to this too. Do you remember, like, what was it? Was it the longest punt return that
Return
we
was
kept?
problematic for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I don't think that's a prop in the major markets of football. Do you
No.
recognize it at all, Adam?
Really,
Longest punt
just in the
return?
Super Bowl, yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the Super Bowl. Okay, yeah. But that
But
one was problematic for us because
yeah.
I think back in the day we started at 17 and a half.
Yeah,
And
minimum. Yeah,
like you
and
just said,
we
Adam, and we had to keep chopping it
yeah.
because we kept getting roasted on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. By the
So
time I left and retired, we were down to what, 13 and a
13
half,
and
12 and a half, something like
yes.
that.
Yeah, so it's guys like this
I
that
think I actually
are
saw 17 and a half on the Super Bowl. Maybe that's
Oh, is that right? Well, hey, I'm not there anymore, so roast
not
away.
at OLG, just in general. Actually,
just
that's
in
not
general,
one.
not OLG. Wow.
That's actually not one I've ever really handicapped. So maybe when we log off, we'll have to go
There,
check that. That might be a
yeah,
bet
there
then.
could be something there. I would take a peek at that because I remember having to drop the number specifically because this was back in the day. I think like an 80% under on every game that we offered.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
That's worth
we have
it.
to
All
keep
right, I
chopping.
might bet that when we log off.
There you go. There you go, everyone. Yeah, that's a good
your
insight.
first your first edge of the day.
But then my specialty has actually always been more on the player prop side
Okay.
because that is not as much something that you really need. Like it's hard to model, I think, because it's so dynamic. So to give an example, say NBA is my main sport, and to give an example, right? Say if Trey Young is out for the Hawks, you know that there's probably going to be some assists and some points to go around to his teammates.
Correct.
But it's not necessarily intuitive. It's not necessarily like easy to mathematically model where those opportunities are going to go. Right? Somebody like Clint Capella, who only is going to score off of dunks, putbacks, lobs, isn't really going to get any additional opportunities. He might even get less opportunities without Trey Young feeding him.
So
While
it's
somebody
not
like
it's not the Jute Murray automatic
well,
in
just
that
on Jabari,
that
right? He'll certainly get the biggest increase, and then by how much of an increase is not just saying he's going to go up. Is he go up 1 assist, 2 assists, 3 assists?
yeah.
Not figuring that out, and then it could be one way one year, and then the next year they could have another player on the team that changes the dynamic, or another player could be in or out due to injury. So it's very hard for the book. It's not like something like the longest touchdown, where the book can kind of just say, okay, every game they bet under, so we're just going to lower the line till it's no longer a huge edge. Because
Right.
I mean, I would say I bet more unders than overs, but it's definitely a mix. And if they just lowered everything by 10%, I'd bet mostly overs and it'd be easy. So they can't just like make a global change like that and gain some huge
That's
so
a great
always been
example.
what I've focused on.
That's a great example because in situations like that, I wrestle with this almost nightly. So I've noticed in situations like that where the residual benefit guy. So let's just say keep the same example. Dejounte Murray, he might average 5.5 assists, and a lot of the books will have a minimum 6.5, and a lot of them will have 7.5. Do you find the same sort of thing, and or do you
When
kind
Young's
of look?
out, you're saying?
Yeah, precisely.
Right, they do, but I would actually say if it's say 6.5, I would most likely love that over, even when he's averaging 5.5, because he's a player who I think I forget exactly off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure he averaged over 8 on the Spurs when he was their best player. So he's a player who I think has the capability to be in that 7.5, 8 range for sure.
Gotcha.
But he's just never going to average that playing with Trey.
Gotcha.
So
ball's not in his hands enough.
Exactly. Right. It's not. He has the skill to run the offense, maybe not at as high a level as Trey, but he could run the offense as a 4-time starting point guard. But
Do you
same
think
thing.
the?
So it
Oh,
kind
go
of
ahead.
depends how they get their points and how they get their assists, and he's just going to run a lot more pick and roll, a lot more ISO even too.
So you mentioned, Adam, that you generally bet more unders. Do you think the public betting into these props has anything to do with that? Do you think books push them a little bit?
Yeah, I would have to assume so. It's definitely
Yeah, right?
decreased it's decreased from a few years ago. I think
Okay.
a few years ago, unders, especially in the NFL, unders were really, really strong.
Oh,
Yeah.
But it's definitely changed some. Because if
Okay.
you look at these same game parlays people post on Twitter, right? It's 12 overs in a row, right? Like I don't even know if some
yeah.
of these people know you
Well,
can bet under. So
Okay.
I have family members where like they'll get physically ill if they have to, even if it's even suggested for an under. So
and honestly, like if you're spreading the games, unders are terrible.
oh
Oh yeah, yeah. But you know what? I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I don't know if it's been because I've been working at a sports book for all of my adult life and the stuff that we were doing against Proline, but I can't stand betting overs. Like, don't get me wrong. There's no better feeling than betting an over prop and they go over by a mile in the third quarter and you can sit back and enjoy the game and not give a shit at what happens at the end of it all. But I just I hate waiting for it. I love betting unders. That is like obviously personal bias. And if there's an edge on the over, I'm going over. But if I had a gun to my head, under or over, I am always taking the under. That's just
I
how I'm
will say my
wired.
single favorite play is same game parlaying somebody under who I think might play very few minutes, and then
Okay.
the book thinks they're going to play 18 and they play 8. It's the best
yeah,
feeling.
those are
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And there's no chance that he's getting back on the court.
yeah,
Okay, so you mentioned same game parlays. I want to run with that. When we were going against the Lottery Corp, I haven't really mentioned this in any piece of content that I've ever put out. I've always kind of kept it a little bit vague. So I'm going to let in because you are a professional. I want to see what your opinion is on it. So basically, what the Lottery Corporation was allowing us to do is parlay. It was same game parlays, but correlated parlays. So you could take the quarterback in a football game, go under to the wide receiver, go under to the second wide receiver, go under to the longest pass in the game, go under to the first half total, go under to the second half total, and just basically put them all together, whether it be 3 teams, 4 teams, 5 teams. Does that say anything to you, Adam? Like I don't think you can do it these days with same game parlays at all the the predatory sports books because I don't think the odds were good enough. But given the right odds, do you think that's a viable strategy? The correlation
Yeah, for
factor?
sure. I mean, I'm not. So it would just depend on how much the correlation is priced in.
Okay.
And I'm not really a math guy as much to know how to figure that out, but certainly I could tell you, certainly that if the quarterback went under and the best receiver went under, it's more likely the game went under. If it's, one
Yeah.
yeah.
percent likely or 50% more likely, I'm sure somewhere in between, but I can't tell you exactly where that lands. But yeah, for sure, that's conceptually going to be accurate. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm not the math guy either. That was the full dog, so I just sort of made it all happen. And I understood it, obviously, right? When one thing happens, that's what correlated is, right? One thing happens, it's more likely that other things are going to happen in the same thing. But yeah, so what we did is we went out with that same strategy, that same system on every single game. It doesn't matter if the total was 54 or the total was 39. It was the same strategy for every same game. And a lot of people question us about that, say, why would you do that? If you knew you had 2 really good quarterbacks, like I don't know, like a Brady versus Aaron Rodgers, why in God's name would you bet unders? But that's just the way it is. It was the numbers that told us to do that. So, that's how it went. And the unders, if you grouped all the unders together, it hit way more often than all the overs together.
But yeah, that would make sense to me. And
Yeah.
it makes sense that you're doing it even with the better players because the lines are just going to be higher. The game's going to be
Yeah,
54 and the passing prop's going to be 290. So, sure, like
exactly.
they're better players, but they could get 270 and you could still win. So yeah, it's not
Yeah.
like it's not
Yeah, they were relative.
if the
Exactly.
correlation is
Yeah.
mispriced, if the original lines are reasonably accurate and the correlation is mispriced, it shouldn't really matter what the original lines are.
Okay. Good. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that was crazy. What we had going on, and it was old style. You could not bet online, so it was literally going convenience store, buying lottery tickets, convenience store, store to store to store, all over the province of Ontario. That's how we had to get down. and it was
Yeah, that's
all
how I found
anonymous.
out
So
about
this
you
was,
guys. Actually, was on
oh, yeah.
that circles off episodes. Then I started listening to
Okay,
your
okay. So you've heard the
podcast.
story and everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right,
that's how I
right.
found you guys.
And I'm sure everyone listening to this has heard it a million times, and so is the
Ah,
Godfather,
shit.
who gets pissed off every time I bring it up. But honestly, it was an angle, and it's nice to talk about it to let everyone know that if you look close enough, sometimes you can find angles and edges, just like Adam is doing here.
Hmm.
I
Um,
will just add with same game parlays. I don't think it's so obvious the ones, but I definitely do think there's mispricing still on them.
Yeah, yeah.
That
I think when we had a little powwow after the lottery corporation stuff went away in Ontario, obviously the Full Dog and I would have loved to continue what we were doing, and we did have a quick glance at the same game parlays. But the problem is uh, everything we did with the lottery corporation was anonymous because there was no accounts involved. There was no logging into your account.
Yep.
Everything was anonymous at the store. So trying to get down the volume, because you need volume. And again, I'm going to quote this podcast: winning is just the beginning. You need to figure out how to get down. We were able to get down massively in Ontario. Whereas if you move that online, all of a sudden now
Yeah.
you have to sign up with accounts. You have to get money into the accounts. The accounts are going to get limited once they see what's going on. And it's not as easy. It's
Yeah.
not nowhere near it. What we did was very difficult, but I think it's even more difficult trying to do it online at all these other
yeah, different
places.
kind of
And the edge
challenge.
was,
Yeah.
and the
Different
edge was, yeah,
challenges. Yeah.
different challenge, and the edge wasn't as big. So everyone likes to
So,
shit on the odds of the lottery corporation. They were actually better than what they're giving you in same game parlays these days at places like FanDuel and
100%.
DraftKings and all that shit. Yeah.
yeah, I don't do a lot of same game parlays where I just based on the correlation, but I do like to handicap the lines, and then with once I think I have lines that are independent value, I do think I'm able to find some correlations where maybe they think it's -2% or 3%. They're paying me over fair, but I actually think that if one hits, the other one's a little more likely to hit too.
Okay.
Very good.
So
Nice.
if you're
Nice.
taking two legs that I think are independently plus EV, and then maybe stacking them, something like say in basketball, one example, the minutes are going to be maybe a little bit correlated between starters.
Okay.
Hmm.
Not directly the stats, but if the game's a blowout, they're all going to play a little less. If the game's overtime, they're all going to play a little more. So you're just getting a little. I wouldn't go out and just try to bet this blindly, but if you can pick winning props anyway, you can get a little extra edge sometimes on doing that.
On the parlay stuff. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because a
Good.
lot,
Good.
and honestly, I think the books might like you a little bit better. Might last a little bit longer sometimes, because they see you
Yeah.
betting same game parlays, and that's like their big winner. So they just kind of throw you in the bucket of same game parlay player. I think
Mm.
I do bet a lot of standalone props, but I think those might get you flagged a little bit quicker.
Oh,
Oh,
fucking.
100%. Okay, that leads it to the burning
Yeah.
question that
Burning question.
as soon as I said we're bringing a professional props bettor onto the podcast, the Godfather, rubbed his eyes and said, "Wait a second. I am the prop guy for our little recreational operation that we do. The Godfather is the prop guy, and he's in there every night with a little bit of a system I gave him to, keep it in line." And he's grinding away. And honestly, we've tried to put more than his W200, which means win 200, $200. And it has been a nightmare. And I feel like as soon as props start to go in the account, that's when you get all kinds of problems with
Yep.
limitations and whatnot. So the burning question, Adam, how in the world do you, as a professional props player, get down on some of these props, standalone props?
Yeah. I got to hear this, man, because
I mean, the short answer is you got to work with people, right? Because
Okay.
yeah.
I'm not particularly welcome at any of the sports books in New York right now.
Okay.
So
Surprise,
Yeah.
surprise.
I mean,
Yeah, okay.
some sites like FanDuel, I will say, are a little bit fair that like even if you get really profiled, they'll give you like 10% maybe of their normal limits, which might be a couple $100 on a prop. Which I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking to bet more, but for a lot of people out there, like it's probably fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically you need to work with people. So one thing I've done a lot, even going back before legalization, is that I've always been less in the PPH world than a lot of people. I've always had people make a lot of accounts for me, like especially accounts like Bovada, a little bit easy, right? No geolocation,
Hmm.
and I've never
Crypto
really
in,
been too
crypto out.
worried about winning long term. So I'll maybe people who don't bet on their own. So you just say, hey, can you make this account? And I'll fund it for you, and then I'll free roll you a percent of the winnings. And they're like, that sounds pretty good.
Why
Uh,
not?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I've actually ended up with a couple people who have become basically like beard gatherers. I think one guy's probably made me 30 bravado accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So
So
okay, yeah,
he, I
yeah.
think he has some big network from poker, and right, so he reaches out to his friends, maybe gives them the sign up bonus, places the bets for them, and he
Uh,
gets the percent I free roll him.
yeah. Okay.
So
Nice. Yeah. That okay.
Interesting.
That makes sense, and that's
I'm
how
not
Yeah.
sure
what.
of the exact legality doing that with the regulated books, so I won't comment if I do that or not. But it might be
No.
something you could be done.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a sticky point for sure, for sure. I always, every time I'm giving my little tips on TikTok and whatnot, I say it with kind of tongue in cheek and be careful with this because, according to the terms and conditions, you aren't supposed to
Yeah.
do that. But then you get into the whole argument, well, why aren't, winners allowed to play at these places? And,
I
the
look at
debate
it as
goes on and on
perhaps
and
I'm
on.
just advising them on some plays that I think might be good.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
there
It's
you go. Yeah. Yeah.
and then people of course bet at kiosks. Um,
Yes, I've
so
seen these
I've
kiosk
I've
stuffers.
worked with some people who get down to kiosks, which not always the biggest limits, especially these days, but they're not moving the line. So next year I'm actually looking to bring in somebody basically to help me like because it's gotten to be too much where I'm originating all the plays and then trying to get them all out too. So I'm looking to
Okay.
bring someone in who can really kind of help me get down in terms of just sending it all out
Yeah.
and kind of figuring out maybe if you hit the kiosk first, the line doesn't move, and you can come back later on the app. Or so
Yeah.
there's
That
definitely
that
a
that's
nuance
what
to
it
that,
is.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. The game within the game. And a lot of the sharp bettors that we've had on this podcast and that we communicate with regularly say the exact same thing. It's an art form. Like the winning is obviously very difficult. There's not too many people on the planet that can figure out how to make regular income in sports betting. But once you do figure that out, that's just the beginning. That you know what I mean? You're
yeah,
just you're
Yeah.
just getting started there because like you said, and then it becomes a monster on its own where a guy like you, if you got to look through and you got to check where your edges are, that takes a lot of time, and then
yeah,
you got to figure out how
putting
to get down.
and I'm putting in an NBA day typically dozens of plays in a single day.
Okay.
So it's time consuming.
Interesting.
Although that's one thing I would say is
Very.
that if you specialize in a sport, it's a lot faster. So like
Okay.
if you like football, I'm betting now actually with my old partner. We kind of went our separate ways on good terms and everything's kind of focused on different stuff. But we actually usually pair back up for the Super Bowl, maybe the NFL playoffs. And
Okay.
he still bets more football than me. But usually like so NFL season starts, I'm usually betting NFL only for 6 weeks. Then NBA starts and it's like the season's basically ended. I just
Really? Okay.
yeah, I
So
just
NBA is your go-to. That is your
it's
favorite.
become my
That is what
go-to,
makes.
yeah. And I
Okay.
found
Nice.
that the time is better spent if you it might take me 2 minutes to find that a certain prop is good, but if you didn't follow it so closely, it might take you 10 or 15 minutes because you'd have to look back, you'd have to look at so much stuff. But I already know I looked at the same player 2 days ago.
Right. Okay. Okay. So
Wow.
So
that makes a lot of sense. So instead of being distracted by week 7, week 8 of the football season and grinding over there, you're like, no, I am solely focused on NBA. And yeah, I just broke down this player 2 days ago. Boom.
Yeah.
Much easier. Job
I say,
done.
okay, yeah,
So
I could see
so
his,
don't give me shit when I take Clint Capella over rebounds on back to back nights. All right. Thank you, Adam.
Adam, we have this Google Sheets, right? And we put all our plays, so we track all our plays, and we share it, right? We're doing this thing together. And sometimes I go in there, I know the Godfather likes playing overs, and when I see 15 consecutive over bets, it
No, it
makes me
wasn't
nervous. I'm
15.
like,
It
hey, what's
wasn't
going on there?
15. It was like
Yes, it was.
7. No, it
Don't
was
lie.
not 15.
Don't
You're
lie.
you're
We
a
have
liar.
a guest. You're supposed to behave yourself today.
Yeah, sorry, Adam. Anyway, it wasn't 15, bro.
I'd expect nothing less from you guys. So.
Okay.
uh, but okay, but most of the time, you said it. You're on the unders and overs. Like you're doing a bit of both, right? Is there ever a time? I guess there could be a time. Like I give the Godfather a hard time just because that's my nature. That's what I've been put on this planet to give him a hard time. But do
True.
you ever like go through times where it's like 15 consecutive unders or 15 consecutive overs?
Uh Yeah, maybe unders occasionally. Just kind of
Okay.
math problem if I maybe play it. I actually,
Mm.
so one thing that's maybe different I found for me from other pro bettors is I actually don't keep very meticulous records. In terms of winning and losing, I do. But I've listened to someone like Rob Pizzola talk about his record of betting on a certain quarterback 5 years ago. I'm not even. I'm honestly not
Yeah.
even breaking it down really by
Gotcha.
stat or if it's over under. It's just kind of an extra time layer of tracking all these extra things. And then
It
I'm also
definitely is.
afraid of just falling victim to sample size.
Okay.
Suppose that, maybe over a month I'm doing very badly on one prop type, but doing very well on another. And then so I say maybe I give up the one that I'm doing poorly on. But I fundamentally think that if you can handicap players, like you should be able to do all their stats. So I just
Okay.
and it's working. So
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, maybe
exactly.
in certain
Don't
in
fuck with a
certain
good
ways,
thing.
maybe
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
under analyzing, but I think it's kind of been a strength of mine almost. It's just sort of having a confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
So I don't
concentrate on
even
the
know
bottom
how I'm
line,
doing
right,
over
Adam?
versus
Content.
under. You know, the end of the month it's always up, so good enough.
Yeah.
But
That's what
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
say.
So
Leave me
maybe,
alone.
yeah. maybe I should then back off a little bit.
but
It
maybe
stuck out
next
to
year
me.
when I'm working with someone, I'd like to kind of keep that stats a little bit better records if I'm doing less of it myself. But it's
Yeah.
and I
Interesting.
would
I
say
hear you.
that's not something I necessarily recommend if you're newer to this because you do want to see
Okay.
what's working. I've been doing it long enough. I just sort of have that confidence.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
Yep.
at the same time, you still need to be careful, right? Because if you make 50 rebounds bets and 50 assist bets, there's just a good chance that one of them is going to maybe do better than the others for,
Yeah.
just
Right.
entirely nothing to do with how you are handicapping.
Well, I can relate to that because everyone knows, anyone that's been following this podcast knows that I like to middle. And that's because I'm chicken shit of variance. I do not like to go on losing streaks. I like to see all green, and it helps me sleep at night. But I've been trying this thing lately where there's a particular website that I keep losing at. I'm sure everyone can figure it out. And people are asking me, like, well, Pisky, why don't you just stop betting at this website? And this has come up years ago, but again, I've always been too chicken shit. What happens if it turns? What happens if it turns? It hasn't turned in 11 years. So now I'm finally starting to take my foot off the gas at this particular website. And yeah, I feel like I have to document because I'm too scared. If I don't, like, what's going to happen? I need to see it. I need to see everything. But like you said, once you've done it for so long, and once I prove to myself that this works, well, then, yeah, I can ease off the tracking.
Yeah, and I remember back when my own account still took decent limits, like last season, because I only moved to New York that year. So I was trying to a little bit of NBA live trading where I would just mostly just betting off of lines that seemed off, a little bit of maybe putting my own opinion of like what was happening in the game, and
Okay.
Caesars was just absolutely slaughtering me, and then I was just making the money back against everybody else. I was like breaking even for a month or something
Yeah.
doing that, and I honestly don't even know if they were sharp or it was just a crazy one of variance, but
Dude,
That's
I
funny. That's
literally,
Pisky's
yeah. So
experience. Go ahead,
yes,
Pisk.
I was in Vegas last season doing what we do, and the same thing happened to me. I was competitive against every sports book, beating every sports book except Circa. I don't stand a chance there, uh, except Caesars. For
Yeah.
whatever reasons, Caesars was crushing me, but that not necessarily a bad thing when you get into all the perks and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. I could not keep a balance at Caesar. I would have to deposit there. I think maybe 10 times during the season. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. And I'm like, there's no way that these guys are sharp. There's no way. It's
that
variance.
was my
But
thinking, but
I
I
don't
think
know.
they must have been sharper than they seem when they were a point off everybody else.
Yeah.
I also must
So,
have run bad because it was like double digit negative ROI, and even if they were the sharp book, right, it couldn't have been. It can't be
right?
that
Yeah.
bad, but
Yeah, exactly. So maybe
but
there is something there with Caesars.
I
I don't
did think it
know.
helped me last it a little longer with that account on my props anyway, so it wasn't
Yeah.
all bad. But
Oh, for sure. For sure. For
eventually they
sure.
got sick of me anyway. But
The Negronis were great. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Negronis, free Negronis, because the real
Yeah.
ones cost north of
$30.
$30 a pop. Yeah. uh, how many props do you generally get to put in an account before they start screwing around with you, would you say? Have you noticed? Is there a number?
there isn't really a set number. Um,
Okay.
it depends on the account. Something like DraftKings, if you're not betting same game parlays, they're gonna kick you off.
Yeah.
Could be a day or two. They're limiting you. Same game parlays, I've noticed they actually give you some time. Even
Okay.
if you're winning, if
Yeah.
you're only playing same game parlays, they kind of put you in the fish bucket for a while. You have to prove to them you're sharp before they kick you off.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
A site like FanDuel,
Agreed.
you might get limited from the from the highest limits pretty quickly, but it's not like DraftKings where it goes from good limits to like $5. So they
Okay.
might take you to 50% limits,
Yeah.
40% limits, and
Yeah, I
eventually when you
can.
get down to
Yeah,
like 10% limits or something, it's not too much use to
yeah,
me. But
I can
you
live
know,
with
Exactly.
that. Like
an account that's like
but
40% limits, and I mean they some stuff like a points bet right before tip off on a fresh account, they might be taking like 10K. So if you're taking
Really?
40%, 40% of that, it's not bad, or even 20% of that. And
yeah,
that
Yeah.
might be like half an hour before tip, but if you're getting 1 to 2,000 a couple hours before the game, like it's pretty good
That
prop. And so
that's really good. That's
really
really good.
varies.
That's a
formidable.
hell of a
Some
lot more than we can get. That's for sure.
some sites
Yeah,
like Prop Builder, like they have on Bovada or Bet Online, I've noticed they seem to not care unless you win. So if you win, it could be 3 days. If you
yeah,
Right.
lose, it could be 2 months. Like
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's one thing
That's
too that's taught me about variance is just I might have a few prop builders going at the same time, putting in the same type of stuff, but not the same stuff. And then one
okay.
just can't lose and one can't win. And it's not like I'm giving good plays to one account. So
Yeah.
it just shows you how, even over 100, 200, 300 bets, like it can be such a huge range of outcomes off of
Yes.
off of similar expectation.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've
mhm,
seen this in other accounts and even local guys, right? When you dip into the black market a little bit, like there's some sites that I'm like, holy shit, there's been times in, Banfield Group's history that I'm like, man, oh man, we like bought a house for this guy. And for whatever reason, like
yeah.
we know they're not sharp, but for whatever reason, it just
Just
would
wouldn't
not
work out.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Adam, I
crazy.
have a question for you
Sure.
with regards to basketball props. Um, what's your favorite prop to zero in on? Because I would love nothing more than to put in like 15 rebound props in a row on Pisk and see what kind of sarcastic bullshit he's
My
going to send back
favorite
my way.
one, which sadly it's almost impossible to still get down on, was turnovers. I love
Oh,
turnovers. I don't know why. I just thought they were set so poorly. I thought they
Really?
so
did not
player
really
turnovers or team turnovers?
player turnovers.
Okay.
But now Caesars, it's really bizarre. They'll still offer it, but they'll cap you to like a tenth of normal props. I have no idea why they even put it up there at this point.
Only
And
on
a
that
lot of
certain prop?
yeah, just turnovers. They don't like want
Oh.
turnovers anymore. They'll put them up just like it's almost just like to tease you.
Oh
And then
shit.
Wow.
DraftKings, they don't put them in the same game parlay, so the odds of me having access to a good DraftKings account at any given moment are on the highest.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha. Gotcha.
that was my favorite. I think my favorite of the more mainstream ones is probably Assist.
This is
Okay.
I
okay.
think it maybe varies the most based on like who's playing, right?
So would you
Somebody
ever do a double assist over on the Mavs with Luca and Kyrie on the same team, or you kind of stay away from something like that?
typically no, but
Okay.
yeah, sometimes. Actually, the last few days I've been on Hero and Butler both over assists in the same game, like I think two
Okay.
or three times.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I
Because
Interesting.
think
what invariably what happens to me is when I play Luca over, Kyrie will go nuts, and when I go on Kyrie, Luca goes nuts, and then I start throwing shit around my house, and then it's just not good for anybody. But
very measured
anyway,
response.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
I
yeah, because unless I'm parlaying it, I just look at it, sure that like maybe there's a little inverse correlation, but each one's a standalone bet. So even if
Mm-hmm.
what I don't mind having a little bit of negative correlation against myself if it's not a parlay, as long as I
Gotcha.
think they're both positive expectation.
Yeah,
And I
that
think
sounds
in a
great.
case like the Mavs, I mean on the Heat, it's because I think because they got Rozier and they got rid of Lowry, and I think it's kind of the books haven't maybe quite adjusted to how they've been playing.
Yeah.
So today's I actually didn't even realize before recording this and went to like a few hours ago that it was the deadline today for the NBA, and I
Yes.
love the trade deadline because the best 2 weeks of the season is the beginning of the first 2 weeks of the season when everything's new, but
yeah,
the deadline's one of the best times too.
because the
Nice.
books don't adjust
It's hard
because
to
of all the new
adjust, right? You
players.
don't know
Yeah,
how like
on the fly.
when Quickly went up to Toronto, there was some amazing overs on him for about a week and a half, and then
Really? Oh
eventually,
wow,
the books
that's a great tip, man. That's
eventually
Yeah.
a
the Bucks
really good
figured
tip.
out like okay, he's because to me he was somebody who's like a starter quality player, but had always been a backup and had been playing with Brunson and hadn't really had an opportunity to
Yeah.
showcase as a starting point guard. So, but if you follow it closely, I think he's somebody maybe not like a high quality starter, but he's a starting caliber player.
Absolutely,
And
I agree with
when he
you.
goes to an opportunity where he's actually the best point guard on his team, his numbers are going to be more in line with maybe a typical starter versus what he was doing in his minutes in New York. We was often sharing the court with Brunson for maybe even half of his minutes.
Gotcha. Any moves today that you liked? What's your favorite move from today so far? Anyway, I think the 3 o'clock. Was it 4:30?
The Knicks, I think, have done the best today for sure.
Nice.
You biased because you're in New York?
No, I'm a Celtics fan.
Well, yeah,
The
that's
Knicks have
true.
done
You grew
very
up in
well.
Boston. Yeah, that's true.
But my personal favorite move is I have a very large bet on the Timberwolves to win the West. So I like that they got Monte Morris. I think he's a good backup point guard.
Very
So
good.
yeah, that's a deep
Nice.
cut on that one, but that's my own personal most likely to make me money bet move of the deadline so far.
Good. Good to know.
Beautiful. You must be loving this Godfather because the Godfather
Oh,
loves
yeah.
betting basketball props. Like, forget football. He loves his basketball props. So this must be hitting all the right notes for
Yeah.
you. But gentlemen, the reason people are here, well, no, the reason people are here, they're here to learn this entire thing. This has been a fascinating episode so far, but the Super Bowl is in a few days from now.
Yeah.
So we got to talk Super
Gotta talk
Bowl
football.
props because yes, Adam has done some studying, and he even it's great. Like I want to explain to you guys how serious he takes this stuff, because I'm like, you're actually going to give us a few props to potentially play? He's like, yeah. He goes, but make sure when we're done talking, you get the podcast out quick because I don't want the line to move on people. So this is how much
There
this
you
guy
go.
cares about this
There
stuff.
you
Can't be
So
giving out stale lines. Twitter doesn't like that.
Yeah.
like, but that's, you know what I mean? That not everyone would say things like that, and you know you're a real pro when you're talking that kind of language. So, Adam, there is a billion Super Bowl props out there.
Yeah.
Like, it is nauseating to go through all of them. So I want you to just give us a quick synopsis of how you approach the Super Bowl, and maybe take us through a day-to-day. The lines are coming out, the props are coming out. What does Adam do in order to find an edge for the Super Bowl?
So, like I mentioned, I'm working with my old partner again on this, so it's kind of two-man operation there. He does football year-round still. Well, not year-round, but like the whole season still. So
Sure.
he's a little more focused in on some of these than I am. And he models a lot of stuff like field goal kicking, and even the extra points, which actually give me some of the props I give out, some extra point plays. But
Okay.
so he's modeling a lot of the game stuff more than me. Stuff that's very hard to intuit, like will the game be tied again after 0-0? Something that's not really in my wheelhouse. Like you can't really just look at it and think like that seems likely or that doesn't seem likely. Something like that, you really have to look at a data set of just a lot of games and come up with a
Right.
number. And then I'm working more on the player side, and also a little bit probably more on the account side of coordinating with people, making sure we have people who can help us bet.
Okay.
And then we keep records too from previous Super Bowls, because a lot of the same stuff is going to repeat. So, but you can see the evolution over the years. I think a couple years ago, Caesars opened, will there be 1,000 total yards in the game at something like no minus 450? And this happens in, I believe it's like 1.5% of games. So minus
Okay.
450 is a good bet, as you gotta.
Yeah.
And then I think
Yeah.
last year maybe it opened minus 1,000, and then this year it opened minus 2,500.
Oh
So,
shit. Okay.
which honestly might even still be a good bet. It's not something we're gonna put 25,000 to 1,000 on or something. Especially this total is a little bit higher than average, so you can't use like an average. You can't just say it's gonna be 1% outcome every game, obviously.
I think there was something with the safeties. Didn't we have like 4 or 5 safeties?
Yeah,
Like
so that
4
was good
years in
luck
a row?
actually. I got into betting right after the safeties. So I
Okay.
got into the golden era when you could bet like no safety minus 600, and I think that was a
Okay,
great bet. Now
gotcha.
that's pretty much gone now. I did that for a few
Oh,
years.
okay. Okay.
So you got to kind of, a lot of the stuff. So we keep notes on what we had last year. It's always a little discouraging to see something you had minus 250 being offered minus 450 now, but
They caught
that's
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
like I was saying about poker in the beginning. If you don't adopt, if you don't adapt, things
Yeah.
you got to keep moving.
You get left behind.
Yep.
And a big part of it too with the Super Bowl is just it's time consuming, right? So because with college basketball, there's a million games, but there's an odds screen, so you can
Right.
just go, if there's an off market price, someone's just going to gobble it up. But with the
Exactly.
Super Bowl, nobody's really going to gobble it up quick. Well, they will, but no one's going to do it in 30 seconds the same way
Yeah.
they're going to do with college basketball, because
Right.
there's no odds screen.
Right.
So there's odds screens for certain things like player props on a place like unabated, but it's not it's not like I mean, I use it, but it's not maybe at the same level. Like the interface isn't maybe as like reliable. I noticed like Caesars and stuff lags, and
Okay.
BetStamp too. I'm not trying to call anyone. I'm just saying like I feel like I haven't seen I haven't really seen props being to the same level as maybe as efficient a feed,
Right. Right.
and at the same time, and then also there's just so many obscure props that aren't even up at all on any kind of odd screen.
Okay.
Mhm.
So one thing that I would say is that even if you want to bet on the game and you're not super sophisticated in terms of like how you process of finding edges, you can just kind of line shop and then pick a side, and you're probably going to do okay. There's a book that I'd
Yeah.
recommend. It's called The Logic of Sports Betting, especially if you're like a little bit newer to the space. And
Okay.
one big theme of that, they call it synthetic hold, where say like a book would be -110, -110, and one book that the hold is -110. But maybe in one site you could get -102, and another site you could get -102 on the opposite side. So you say the synthetic hold there is -102, because even though at one book it's a lot higher, you could lay either side of what you want at a pretty low rate.
At a cheaper price, yes.
And
Yeah.
then with the
Much
Super
cheaper.
Bowl, essentially you can find stuff where I wouldn't recommend arbing and middling and trying to hit these sort of tight middles, but you might find Ayuk on over a longest reception, over first reception minus, say 11 and a half, and then
Okay.
on 14 and a half on another site. And,
Oh,
he's
okay.
probably not going to land 12, 13, 14. The rake on the side that the under 14 and a half or the over 11 and a half might be a little bit more. So I wouldn't recommend, unless you've really studied how much each yard is worth, going out and betting both. But if you're
Okay.
looking to have either slightly negative or in many cases, maybe even a little bit positive bets, if you're seeing these discrepancies, you can just say, okay, I'm a Niners fan. I want to root for Ayuk to have a long first catch. If you're
There you
getting the
go.
11 and a half, you're probly doing fine. If you're betting over
Gotcha.
13 and a half, over 14 and a half, that it's just going to be a
No,
pretty
no.
negative bet. So
Over 11 and a
Okay.
half, baby.
Very,
that's
very
actually, I think
simple, but very simple, but very smart.
Yeah.
Honestly, it
right.
is.
And it doesn't have to be right. You can just pick, it's like stocks. I don't know a lot about stocks, but if you were going to give me 5% off on the purchase price, I'd buy a lot of stocks, right? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't,
Yeah.
you don't
100%.
need
Very
to
good
Yes.
example. Very good
you don't need to know
example.
what the company's doing or anything to,
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
make money on it.
Yeah.
I got a question for you, Adam. Like I've noticed myself a real proliferation of cross sport prop betting. Like this year, it's just all over the place. So you'd get a Super Bowl prop, and you have a hockey prop, or a different sport like Tatum going over 29 and a half points for your Celtics, and somebody to score a touchdown or something in the Super Bowl. Do you partake in any of that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, I do. It's a little
Okay.
more time consuming than even than some other stuff, because there's so many different. The books aren't even offering the same stuff on that, so
Mm-hmm.
they might have Tatum points matched up against two different things. NBA,
Gotcha.
you can get some really big edges sometimes, because maybe Tatum's out, and then the Jalen Brown points they thought was going to be 22 and a half, but now it's 25 and a half. So you can find some big edges just kind of later in the week as
Oh,
um,
okay.
but
Because they already have.
they have
Oh,
to
okay.
prop
Because
up,
they're
right?
yeah, because they're matching them with someone in the football game. So if the number is 22 and a half early and it moves to 25, they're still using that 22. Is that what
Right. The
you're saying?
22 and a half isn't even up, 10 days
Okay.
in advance, but maybe he's averaging around that. And
Gotcha.
but then Tatum's
Okay.
out, so the line's going to move 3 points, 4 points, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
See?
That's smart.
Now,
That no,
I'm not the
that's
only one who knows this. You're going to start, if you're not quick, you're going to start seeing a lot of -160s on the side that you thought was a good value. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
but
that's
I
fair.
would say maybe the thing that's most interesting to me about the cross sport props is distributions. So you might have two things that are both around 20, but one is more likely to doesn't mean the distribution is going to be the same. So, example, I think I saw it was maybe forgetting the NBA player, maybe Tyler Hero's points against like Ray Rice's not Ray Rice, Rice's longest reception,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and I think the Rice was maybe lined even a little bit higher than I expected Hero to be. But what I especially liked about that is that Rice there's a decent chance he can just get 28, 30, 35, these long ones, and be almost guaranteed to beat Hero. But as somebody who's lined at 6.5 receptions, I think it's very unlikely he's ever going to get his longest catch is rarely going to be like 12 or something. And
Mhm.
So I think
Very
even
good.
if the median is a little bit similar, that you're still going to maybe favored with somebody like Rice
Okay.
because he's more likely to go over by a lot. When Hero goes over, he might go over 2, 3, 4 points a lot of the time.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
books, it's time consuming, but it's also fun,
I,
especially if maybe football's not your main sport.
I like
You
that
can,
one.
if football's not your main sport, you can say, okay, like I'm gonna just take the line offered on this player, and the NFL game is roughly correct, and then it's compared against how many birdies are gonna be in, some golfer's gonna have, and maybe that's what you focus on. So
Gotcha.
you might think the birdie line is too low or too high. So
Right.
Nice,
Okay.
it's a
nice.
Yeah. No.
way to kind of have a little fun shopping for someone who's maybe not as football focused even.
This is very interesting. Wow. Yeah. No. That's bang on. So, what do you have your eyes on? What are these
Yeah.
people that have been sitting with us for 50 minutes, grasping to your every word, like I have been? What are you looking at in the Super Bowl, Adam?
All right, so one prop, and I think this one might go even
Hold
higher.
on, let me get my pen ready. Okay.
I think one prop that might go even higher by the Super Bowl. I played Samuel under 15 and a half rushing yards. It's actually more widely available at 16 and a half now. I'd probably play 16 and a half to up to about 120. I think it's probably going to be even likely better than that available for a lot of people. And I've noticed in the Super Bowl, it seems, I think because people focus so much on just one game, it's like it seems really easy that he could just get 18 rushing yards. Like it's of course it's really easy. I expect to lose that, 40% of the time probably.
Okay.
But it's like there's not any more plays in the Super Bowl than a normal game. Right?
Yeah.
Purdy can't run more than normal. Samuel can't run more than normal. Purdy pass more than normal. McCaffrey more rushes than normal. Like there's only so many plays in the game. Um,
Correct.
eh, so I just kind of think that you got this little bump, especially on maybe plays that seem a little more gadgety, like Samuel, or
Right.
one I'm not going to give this one out because it's not the best prices this year, but one that's been a big favorite of mine, and I've played a little bit, but not at stuff that's not available, is like under 2.5 players to throw a pass. Because people just expect like everything to happen in the Super Bowl, right? It's
Yeah.
only it's only 60
Yeah.
minutes in the game, no matter how big the game is.
What's
Another
the
one,
odds usually on that? Just sorry to cut you off on the 2.5 players. I remember we went over on that a couple years, and we were
Yeah.
freaking out when they did like this crazy ass trick play. I think it was
it
the
is very
Philadelphia.
team specific.
Okay.
That's one where I wouldn't just say the team, like the league averages, they only happens X number of times. I think you really have to look at the coaches and the players, and
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
you
I
know,
think
if you
Really
have
that's what
special.
Mahomes,
that's
you're a
what
little bit.
that's what that's what triggered us. Yes.
Sure,
It
Yeah.
if
was
you have
something.
Mahomes, you're a little bit less likely to run a trick play maybe than
Yeah.
someone else. But
Yeah. Okay.
a
Um,
second one, tying it back to earlier in the discussion, was I actually am playing longest touchdown under in this game. I don't think
Okay.
it's a tremendous edge because it's a pretty high total, and the 49ers are pretty good at deep passing and big plays in general. But there might be better than this available, but I would say under 39 and a half, up to
okay.
about minus 120. I would play. I think I might even have some as high as like 41 and a half. I'm sure it's going to be offered different lines in different places.
Beauty.
One of the least fun bets you can ever have because you can lose the game. You can lose literally every single play of the game. You can lose, and you can't win until the game's over.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
you're going to win more than half the time, and hopefully enough to cover the rake. So, and
Okay.
then
Interesting.
the last two. I'm actually played both kickers under the extra points.
Under their
Let me
extra
just
points.
check.
Okay. Not their total points.
The
The extra points.
made extra points.
Okay.
I
Made
Okay.
think I
extra
would
points.
play Moody up to about 120 and Butker up to about minus 135. I've
Okay. And
actually
what
been
are their
noticing
numbers?
it's varied. Butker actually opened much higher and was getting bet down. I've noticed a lot of two-way action on this one. That's actually one of the bets my partner's really specialized in. But if
Okay.
you look at team totals, touchdowns is like a pretty big market, or at least team total, and from that you
Yeah.
could derive touchdowns.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then you
The
just kind of
touchdown number is 5.5, correct?
Yep, 5.5. Actually, I played a little bit of under on that as well, at about minus 120 or better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But if you look at the team touchdowns versus extra points, of course, most of the time you're going to have as many extra points as you have touchdowns. But between misses and 2-point conversions, it could be a big difference. So I'd
Okay.
rather be on, say, Moody under 2.5 extra points at minus 120 than team touchdowns under 2.5 at plus 120. even though they're very similar bets. But I just think a little bit more often than not, it's gonna work out in your favor.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
because like you said, all that extra stuff, and Moody, I think is has been missing them lately, has he
Yeah,
not?
he's
A
even
little
been
bit.
missing some, so a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah,
a little
yeah. So
bit.
I think there's a
And
little extra there.
I
Yeah.
noticed the trend too. I don't know for sure if these coaches will do it, but like I feel like I see this more now when there's a penalty on the touchdown. Everyone goes for 2 from the 1 yard
Yep.
line.
Yeah,
So there's
Yep.
just a
yeah,
lot
Yep.
of little ways to win that one. It's
yeah. So that
And
plays into your under on
right,
PATs.
right, and it's
yeah,
not the most fun bet. You're just sitting there rooting against touchdowns.
Yeah.
I love unders.
But
I am going to bet that one because let's not forget Moody's a rookie kicker too as well, is he not?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So rookie
And
kicker in the Super Bowl. That's a little
and
nerve wracking.
none of these are crazy edges. Just so you don't want people going
Okay.
up
Yeah.
and the
Yeah. Yeah.
bankroll.
Pump the brakes, everyone. You
The
Yeah.
know.
stuff
Yeah.
that
You know they're not. You know they're gonna go. They're gonna hammer these
the
things.
stuff that I see as huge edges usually is gone either because I bet it or because someone else bet it or typically both. So
Yeah.
the
Okay.
stuff I have
Okay.
some stuff that is huge edges, but typically not up now. Or if it's up now, it's not going to be up tomorrow. So
Gotcha.
A lot of Pisky's followers especially in the beginning would just basically hit Pisk up and say, "Shut the fuck up and give us picks." So this
Still
is what you
happens.
can. So you cannot say pump the brakes. People are gonna eat this shit up.
It
I
still
think they're good bets.
happens.
Feel free to
Yeah.
bet them, but yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't. Don't
Nice.
come
No,
to
no.
me.
I like your reasoning
I
behind it.
I
yeah.
lose. I have plenty of losing days and certainly plenty
Yeah.
of losing bets. So it's
As
actually one of the
does.
biggest reasons I would never sell picks. Is I would hate like I go
Oh
through stretches, right? We have 100 bets and you're doing terrible. I would hate to
yeah.
be losing other people money, people yelling at you on
Oh
Twitter.
my
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
You
Two
know,
No.
sides. Yeah.
Brutal. This game is hard enough.
Yeah. It's
Losing
hard
streaks are
enough.
hard enough. Losing streaks happen, right? A lot of people won't tell you that. A lot of people won't admit that. It happens. And then you got to fix things, right? And if you have all that pressure of, subscribers, like, could you imagine? I'm sure there's like death threats going to these people when they
Yeah.
get on a cold streak or whatever, things aren't working anymore. So no, I would never do that. I don't like the way it's done either. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
have to be, are pretty shady in the whole way of doing the selling thing.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't know. It's never been a remote thought in my mind to do
But
that.
yeah,
Kind
even
of
if
stuff.
you're doing it ethically and you're a winning player, I can lose my own money. I can deal with that. I'm used to it.
Yes.
I've done that plenty of times, but
That's exactly why I don't give people advice on crypto. I'm a massive crypto enthusiast. It has helped us immensely in sports betting. But I will never tell
yeah,
anyone, "Hey, go buy some Bitcoin," or
yeah,
get into
I like
decent
Bitcoin, but I
DeFi.
don't tell anyone else to buy it.
No,
Yeah.
no,
I have,
not
Precisely.
I've
my
never
thing.
understood the confidence of the people who are either convinced it's going to go down or convinced it's going to go up because
Yeah.
I have no idea. So
Right? I know.
just
Is
like anything else,
does,
it's a gamble.
Hmm.
it is. It is. Hashtag always betting. Do you have any more, Adam? Because I think I have one to add to your list here.
I think that's it on what
You think that's it?
If people want to hit me up on Twitter though, if they say, especially if they have one maybe they've already been looking at, and they say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I was looking at this prop. What do you think?" Happy to answer. So
That's amazing.
Okay,
That
you should never have said that. Now half of Vaughn, half of Vaughn. Once they see this, they're gonna hit you up, bro.
Half
that's
of
okay. Yeah,
Vaughn.
I'm happy to weigh in.
It's
I
okay.
certainly don't handicap it. I've seen some plays from some other people who I think are sharp, and sometimes the opposite what I'm on. And
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
that means probably one of us is wrong on that given play. But if you're putting in 100, I'd make up a number, but 150 plays on the Super Bowl, there's no way all 150 are plus EV. I think they are, or I wouldn't bet them. But
Yeah,
if there's going to be some margin for error. If 130 of them are plus EV, you're going to do just fine. But
100%. And to go on that, Adam, I will recap the strategy that we used, the Full Dog and I, for many years. The Godfather can attest because he saw us doing this in Las Vegas. So we had this random bar in Toronto that would put out a prop sheet every
missed
Super
that
Bowl.
place.
And basically the owner of the bar or whoever was running this pool would put out his own prop numbers. Like just randomly pull numbers out of his ass, inflate certain popular guys. So us guys, being, mostly top-down bettors, we'd go to a site like Pinnacle and just see what the numbers were at currently, and then we'd take this prop sheet and bet everything that was off. And guess what? This guy doesn't offer that sheet anymore. He stopped doing it a couple of years ago because I you guys can put together why he stopped doing what he was doing, because it was glorious. Like, could you imagine? You just gave your props out here. Debo Samuel at 25.5 rushing yards. That's the kind of shit that
now
he
that
was
would
doing.
be something I'd recommend a big bet.
Yeah, and
There you go. So, just to follow it up, I do have something of my own to give out. Actually, it's not my own. We are in touch with different groups, betting groups, and this one came up, and the line has moved drastically, so I'm not scared to give it out. And I talked to the guy that presented it to me yesterday, and he said that he's very deep on this prop, so I think he's done all the betting that he needs to do.
I know what's coming now. Jesu Christ.
The halftime song. Usher's doing the halftime song. Apparently,
First song.
My Way is a lock. Now, that's not coming from me, so don't shoot me if it doesn't happen. But when I was asked to help bet this thing, the line was plus 225 at MGM. I went on yesterday because I was getting the same messages, and I said, you know what? Enough of this. I'm going to put something on it. I went to Betway, and the line is now even money. So that's a pretty significant move on first song for Usher. So
Usher does Frank Sinatra's My Way?
I don't know if it's Franks or not. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Those kind of markets are interesting because normally if something goes from plus 225 to plus 100, it's never a bet. Except these outcomes, like if someone's seen the set list and
that's just it.
Then plus 100's a great bet. Minus 200 could be a great bet. So
100%. If you're guaranteed the return on it, I don't care what I'm betting at, right?
Yeah.
I'm making some calls. I'll hit you up, Adam. I'll take care of you.
Those
Adam,
different kind of markets for sure.
Sharing your...
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Something like Grammys is not something I really bet much, but those are like the rare time where, like, if you see the steam, you actually want to follow the steam, even a worse number. Because
there you go.
Somebody might know what's
exactly.
Coming.
Everyone, all the conspiracy theorists out there want to make a case that the NFL is scripted. Well, guess what? These props that we were just talking about actually are scripted, right?
Yeah,
there is a script to follow. So if it leaks, there you go. You can make some coin on it.
Adam, really quickly, sorry to cut you off because I got to get this in. I promised my daughters. Okay. Is Travis Kelce going to propose to Taylor Swift after the game if the Chiefs win?
I'm gonna guess no, but
that's what I told them.
No expertise in this subject beyond what you'd expect.
I got some serious Swifties that I went to for that question, and at the time it came out, one of these social media sites, BR Betting or something, put out, and it was the no was minus 250, and I got a Swiftie, and shout out to Jordana. She gave me a breakdown of exactly what she thinks is going to happen, and she had no at a 95% certainty. And I'm like, well, a minus 250. Don't quote me on this, math people, but I think it's like a minus 250. Minus 250 is 75% accuracy or whatever.
Probability.
Probability. Yeah, I'm getting nervous because the camera's on me. But so I'm like, whoa, I think there's value on the no there. And then I went over to FanDuel because that's who posted it, and they're now sitting at minus 3,000 no. So maybe some Swifties out there cashed in.
Yeah. I don't know, well, there you go. You missed the bus again.
Yeah. I'm guessing that wasn't the biggest limit prop they posted this week, but maybe one of the most mispriced ones at least.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Would you lay minus 200 on everybody's favorite prop? Anytime touchdown scorer, Christian McCaffrey.
No, I haven't played either side of that one.
Because you know what? Up here, our at halftime, FanDuel runs the show, the broadcast, and people weigh in on this anytime touchdown, and it's like it's the best bet of the game, like 16 weeks running. And, it's always minus 300. And now the people are telling me there's value at minus 200. I don't know. I just thought I'd throw it up.
Yeah, the minus anytime touchdowns actually not one we bet a ton of. I do plan this weekend to just kind of go through, and I think you're going to see maybe a little bit more divergent prices on some of the player props, and just kind of probably most of the unders, just kind of take the highest number unders on Mahomes passing yards, Purdy passing yards, Kelsey passing yards. I'll see, but those aren't necessarily Kelsey receiving yards. Obviously, those aren't necessarily strong opinions. But if you get, one, like I was saying before, you get one book, if say offering 245 and one book offering 255. Don't mind just taking a shot on the 255
Yeah,
under it,
there you
even
go.
if it's not something that I think's like a way off line or anything.
Here's another question, Adam, because you follow it a lot closer than someone like myself. Is it better to bet unders closer to game time? Do you think all the books inflate their numbers from what you've seen in past years?
It's less than it used to be. That's a common talking point on podcasts. Say, oh, everything's going to steam up on Sunday. I think there's so much sharp money in the market now that it's not as maybe much as it used to be.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But I think there's going to be some, and it's going to maybe split off a little bit. Like some book might move 6 yards, but maybe a little bit sharper book will move it off on say passing yards. So yeah,
Gotcha.
I think it's a little time intensive, but if you're willing to kind of shop around, I think some especially Kelsey, Mahomes, like probably the very most public ones.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be some opportunity for that, but I wouldn't recommend betting everything under on Sunday just on the theory that
Got
but
it.
it's a little too high. So I'd rather
Yeah.
everything under than everything over, but I don't know if either one's
Okay.
the best.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great.
you're talking his language now. Oh, geez, I'm not going to fucking hear the end of this.
Great
I
tips.
think football is a game with a little bit more weighted towards under than basketball, because you have the opportunity for these big plays. You can only get one rebound at a time, but you can throw a 60-yard pass.
Right.
So
right.
it's a little
That's
bit.
True.
It's a little bit more like the median and the mean are going to diverge a little bit more sometimes on a football prop than on a basketball prop.
That's right. You got to know your sports a little.
Okay, one more question, because the Godfather and I have been butting heads about this, and then I'm going to ask you who's going to win the big game, and that's how we'll finish off this amazing episode.
No, I got the speed questions for him.
Speed questions?
Yeah.
Okay, you ask him your questions.
Okay, you ready?
Let's do it.
Oh, speed. Okay, speed questions. Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
Speed questions. These are all Super Bowl props. Heads or tails?
Tails always.
Okay. First team to score a TD.
Chiefs.
Nice. National anthem. Over or under 95 seconds?
Seems short, I guess, compared to other years. I'll say over. Not something I follow though. No,
Okay.
no one listen to me.
It's going to be an under anyway. Anyway.
Okay. Then I'll change my answer to under that.
First time out. Who calls the first time out?
Not something I've bet, but I'll say San Francisco.
Okay. Total field goals in the game, 3.5. That's an OLG special.
Well, at even money, I'd take if it was like minus 115, I'd take the under. I actually would lean over a little bit. I played actually both kickers over 1.5, but just to kind of off market prices. So
okay.
I'll say over. But
okay. Total TDs, 5.5. Over under.
I'll say under on that one.
Okay, and you alluded to this already. You kind of gave us the answer. Total players to throw a pass.
I'll say under 2.5.
Under 2.5. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for partaking.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That was a great exercise. The thing that the Godfather and I butt heads against, Adam, and I know it's definitely situational, but standalone props in basketball, should the Godfather be laying minus 125?
Absolutely.
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 See? Thank you, Adam. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I think minus 150, minus 160 is fine.
Really? On just like a normal total points or something? If
it's a bad line, yeah. If they open the guy.
You know what? The guy's holding the operation back. What can I say?
But if the line's 10.5 points, and I think the guy should be lying to 13.5 points. It doesn't happen often, but and it's been bet up to minus 145. That's
greatest
I would have rather had it
guest
120
ever.
Or something, but.
Greatest guest ever.
Okay, that just totally shot me in the foot. I wasn't expecting you to say that, but it does make sense. So Godfather,
that didn't work out to you.
Don't listen to me.
Piscalito, eh?
Next time you have a question about props, you DM Adam. You do not ask me, Godfather.
I'll me and you got some work to do, Adam.
Yeah, if you make a number and the price is good to that number, then yeah, it doesn't matter, right?
Cool.
There you go.
Love it.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, last question. Who's going to win the big game, Adam?
I'm from Boston in the Brady era, so I got used to just assuming Brady was going to win every time. So I'm going to say, well, I just assume Mahomes is going to win every time now. So I'm going to say
Yeah.
Chiefs.
Mahomes.
Yeah,
Chiefs. All
yeah,
right,
that's
I'm
it.
with you. And the
Although,
Godfather's on the 49ers.
I'm gonna go
if I could just,
49ers. I've had enough, and that's it.
although
But
if
not.
I could
I
just,
am worried now that you're on the Chiefs. I'll say that.
no, I have zero. Honest answer, I actually think probably a little bit of value on the 49ers spread. I
Oh,
I
okay.
don't really bet
Okay.
spreads. I've been told that by people who people are smarter than me at betting spreads. I
Okay.
don't think it's a huge value or anything,
Well, hey,
but
listen. We all know GRP says you bet teams, not numbers. So
that
let's. All
honestly
right.
for the Super Bowl, I might
Let's.
throw in a negative expectation bet on the Chiefs because you got to
Yeah.
back Mahomes here.
Yeah.
There you
Sounds
go.
good. Sounds
Wow, what a
good.
way to finish it. Well,
Yeah.
Adam, I want. Oh, and last question now. Where are you watching the big game?
I think I'm probably gonna live a little bit outside New York City. My partner lives actually in the city. I'm probably gonna go down and watch it there.
Nice.
Okay,
Escape the
sweet.
2-year-old and the 4-year-old who aren't the biggest football fans. So
That's true. You've made mention on Twitter a few times that betting professionally is fun and all, but doing it with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at your feet is very challenging. And
Yes.
I cannot help but the
Yeah.
Godfather has a few daughters that he's been through that, so I'm sure he can relate.
3 times.
yeah, I work from home and they don't really care about time sensitive lines, surprisingly. So.
No. They don't get it. And it
That's
doesn't get any
hilarious.
better, too. I don't know how old they are, but let me be the first to tell you it doesn't get any better.
Yeah, the 2 and 4, and I believe.
Oh, but you know what? Give me 2 and 4 over 16 to 19 any day of the week.
Yeah, I've heard little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. So.
Problems.
Oh,
Hey,
Jesuit grease.
that's a line.
Yeah.
I
The
believe you.
Godfather, I think, is going to a local Super Bowl party in Etobicoke, house party.
Yes.
And I reserved a wild, stupid party because you know what? I went to Circa last year. I watched it at the sports book with the Godfather, right down in the sports book at Circa. So I couldn't do something quiet. So I'm doing something loud. So you're gonna have to stay posted to my social media. Keep an eye out, and I will take you guys for the ride of where Pisky's gonna be watching.
You're gonna be disappointed. You can't match that Circa sports.
We're gonna
book.
try. We're gonna. At least I'm trying.
Well, you know what?
Can't
You'll
give it a
try. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, Adam.
Adam, pleasure.
You're the
Yeah,
man. This was a
pleasure
lot
of
of
mine,
fun,
guys.
honestly,
Great to talk
dude.
to you.
And everyone, listen to this. This was Adam's first ever podcast.
Oh,
Can you believe how well he did?
pro? You're a
This
pro,
guy
man.
is absolutely pro better.
Have him
pro
on again.
podcaster.
Do
We
your
will.
job.
I'd love to come back
producer.
sometime. Yeah, NBA
Yeah,
props.
come back. Yeah.
Talk,
We will.
Talk,
We
talk
will
some
for
NBA
sure.
props. Yeah, it'd be my pleasure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, man, and thank you all for joining us. We'll catch you guys next week. Enjoy the Super Bowl, everyone.
Go Niners.